Hey everybody, it's John Krask with Everlibrary, the Everlibrary Institute. It's been Books Week 2025. We're having some big chats about things like censorship and discrimination and the role of libraries in people's lives and the barriers that get put up when they make state laws and maybe some stuff happening federally and certainly at the local public library and school library level, the barriers that get put up to people enjoying themselves. I mean, really, we could talk a lot about censorship as erasure, which is a true story, but also, like, why the heck do they want to get in our way? There's a certain American ideal about keeping the barriers low, letting folks figure it out for themselves. And at banned books, it's a time between an author and their reader that has no intermediation. What book do you want? The library will get it for you. And no barrier. We're not going to let the state tell us what we can and cannot read. One of the things that's a real joy for me is that I get to, on Every Library Live, once in a while meet some real legends. And today I get to introduce some of you for the first time and some of you to delight about reacquainting with Joe R. Lansdale. Joe, it is a pleasure for me to meet you today. Thank you for taking some time with us.
Thank you, John. That's kind of you to say.
No, this is true. So I always want to kiss butt for my talent who comes on the show. So I'm going to read your official bio first, and then I got 20 questions for you, okay?
All right.
Great. Internationally best-selling author Joe R. Lansdale has received the Edgar, Raymond Chandler, Bram Stoker, British Fantasy, Spur, and Inkpot Awards. His work includes mysteries, westerns, horror, thrillers, pulp, crime, and science fiction. He has written 52 novels, a bunch of short story collections, including The Best of Joe R. Lansdale, Things Get Ugly, and Born for Trouble. His short fiction has been adapted for Masters of Horror and Netflix Love, Death, and Robots. His Bubba Ho-Tep and Cold in July were adapted as major motion pictures. His two most famous characters are the basis for the Hap and Leonard TV series on Tubi. Tubi also features the book Thicket was adapted as well. He's written graphic novels for DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, and others. Joe, you are so prolific in that your approach to running across genre, it's again, pulp, horror, crime, western, southern gothic. I mean, when you wake up in the morning and you're like, okay, I'm going to throw a dart at the board. What genre am I going to write today? Joe, how do you approach this?
You know, I don't really think of it that way. It's mostly subconscious. I get up, I got a story to tell. And that story is made up of all the different things that I have read, many of them early on from libraries and bookmobiles. And so I absorbed all of that, and I think it kind of went into the stew. So when you stir it around, you don't get like pieces of this or that, because that to me is not blending genres. That's a hunk of genre. What I've really done is done it to the point where I feel that it's become a singular entity based on all of these ingredients.
So, I mean, you're also not only multi-genre, you're multi-format. I mean, the fact that you've got movies, the new streaming services, you've published for a wide variety of publishing houses, and they love you. I mean, this is not this media landscape everybody talks about as being so disruptive. It looks like it's very creative to me.
I think so. I mean, I think the negative of it is just that there's so many of them that although it doesn't take much for any one of them to have a hit, because you don't have to have as many people, you have so many choices. So what you have is a little bit of this, a little bit of that. That hurts the people as far as like trying to make money or being successful at it. But for the creative standpoint, it gives you so many different kinds of options, you know. I mean, I remember I also wrote for Batman the Animated Series, and I remember when I did that, I thought I was really reaching out beyond what was going on, you know, because all we had was regular TV, but this was so unique and different. And you had three basic channels, and you had then cable, where you had a lot of stuff that was just stuff. And so I'm excited by this new frontier.
Yeah, the new frontier allows for a lot of remixing as well. You have some genre-setting characters though. Hap and Leonard are more than cult favorites. They're in some places household names. I mean, characters like that, you made them. They're yours, and yet they've moved on to other other, what's the word I'm looking for here? Not formats, but other lives. You know?
Yeah, they were in comics. There was even a couple of comics about Hap and Leonard, and then there were, of course, there was of course the television series. It had 3 seasons and was on Sundance. Originally was their #1 show, and it moved to Netflix, and then I think it went AMC Plus, and then now it's on Tubi, which is a really good place for it to be.
Yeah. What makes those 2 characters so enduring, though, do you think?
It's hard to know what makes them so enduring. If I knew that, everything I wrote would be very enduring.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But I think one thing is that I wrote from a place of experience, because I grew up in East Texas. I worked in the rose fields. I did most of the jobs that they did, a lot of them. I worked in an aluminum chair factory. I was a bouncer. I've done all kinds of things in my lifetime, which is getting to be kind of extended now, which is good. You know, I was a farmer. I've done all these things, and they give the experiences for the 2 characters. And I've known people straight. I've known people gay. So it was interesting to bring along this gay character at a time when it wasn't that I was the first person to do it, but it was not common and not popular, or to have a black lead character, because I think they're both lead characters, or to have this friendship between a heterosexual and a homosexual character. And the black character, being homosexual, was also very conservative, a conservative for his time. He was, I guess, a Ronald Reagan conservative, where Hap was, a more liberal guy. He was an anti-war resistor, just like me. And, so there's a lot of things in common. So I think it came from a source of experience and reality for me.
I think that's fascinating, and the genre breaking, the groundbreaking. They've been around for a long time, and folks should not forget that how groundbreaking that was. But speaking about the long time, I was thinking about I'm approaching my late 50s. I just clicked over to the mid 50s. I'm not suggesting I'm as I'm anywhere near retirement, unfortunately. But I think about the characters in Bubba Ho-Tep being in that nursing home, and the perspective of a younger man as a writer and an older man as a reflector on his work.
In the 40s. Well, for one thing, is that I grew up during the time when Elvis became the thing. He was the musical thing, and I grew up during the time when John Kennedy was assassinated. And at some point in time, my mother was injured and had to be in a home. What they used to call an old folks home. Yeah. And she was there for a while, and I spent a lot of time there, my brother and I. And so I picked up a lot of vibes from that and those other 2 elements. And when I was asked to write a story about Elvis, for whatever reason, all of these things just melded together. And I was reading a lot of beat poetry and On the Road and stuff like that. So it has a kind of, if you read the story, not just the the visualization, the film, it has a kind of beat rhythm to it, and it's also satirical, and it was a lot of fun when I was writing it. But I thought I had the biggest disaster ever. Of the bunch, so I was pretty happy with that.
Yeah, no doubt. The chance to continue to explore new territory. I know you've got an essential collection that's currently in play. Right. Like, there's some wild stuff in there. There's some terrifying stuff in there. Yeah. The monster. If I can go into this for a moment.
Go ahead.
Whether it's a human monster by their character or their nature, or that supernatural monster, there's something about monsters right now that's catching my attention in terms of how...
You're right about that. I don't think it's just you. I think that's starting to catch a lot of people's attention. And I think during times when politics and social things are really strife, you tend to find that is an outlet that appears, because it becomes a more representational of that sort of thing, but yet more, you can handle that better. Because we really are in a strange time. I grew up in the 60s. I was, one of the 60s guys, of the liberal guys, and still am. and proud of it. And when I was growing up during that time, I was an anti-war resistor. I was pro-civil rights. And now we're going through a time that's extreme, but on the other end, I believe. And to me, I think what happens is people want relief. And one of those things in relief is monsters, because they sort of represent those horrifying things, but yet again, they're manageable. And oftentimes the monster loses in films and stories. Not always, but frequently, you know.
Right. I mean, the monster's not always the villain. Sometimes they're just the antagonist. No. Yeah. The monster as societal reflection, though. I mean, there is an allegorical opportunity with any of those monster stories. Yeah, absolutely.
And as a writer, I mean, I've written things that I think are just stories, are just fun, but most of my work always, not always, or that's not fair, but most of my work has some social aspect to it, something I'm dealing with, but it's a way of massaging that idea into a story. And then some stories aren't that massaged, you know, and some of the stories in The Essential are tough. They were tough for me to write.
Yeah.
And there are some people, of course, say, oh my God, you don't have the right to write that. You shouldn't. But a lot of times they misunderstand those stories, because we're going through a time when people don't have the reading experience they keep taking everything literal. Satire has almost become a lost art, which is one of my favorite things.
Yeah.
People don't understand it anymore. They take everything literal because they're not educated in reading. And I think it's scary that we're not pushing reading more in school. You know, they need to make sure that people can read, and that they do read, and they don't just read synopsis of novels and short stories, but they read the actual work, you know. And that's how you learn to think for yourself. That's how it develops curiosity, which is an engine, so to speak, in everything you do in life.
I'm gonna say that you should run for state superintendent of schools, wherever you happen to be sitting, because the idea that satire is not the opposite of sincerity. You know, you can have both. The idea that humor is not the opposite of horror. There's a set of literacy skills here that go beyond vocabulary that you're describing.
Right. Well, you know, humor in many ways can make horror more horrifying. Even though you might laugh, there's a part of you that goes, what am I laughing about? Oh my goodness. But it's necessary. It's another tool. And the idea that and this is also true of publishers, and where they want to take those tools away from writers and say, please don't be offensive. Don't write a horror story that's not offensive. Don't write social issue stuff that's not offensive. That's the way you discuss these things. And that doesn't mean it's always offensive, but it means offense is a tool, just like satire.
Yes. Yeah. Well, offense is actually in many ways, offense is at the core of a lot of allegations in that censorship conversation.
Absolutely. You know? That's exactly right.
And the offended majority population, whether they're offended by a particular story or offended by the subject of the story or the object of the story, is what drives a lot of censorship. You know, because otherwise, offense becomes in some way, shape, or form obscenity to people.
Yeah, it's like when you take Mark Twain, there's people that want to ban it. They think it's racist, whatever. And I thought, my God, there's no more anti-racist writer than Mark Twain. He's one of the people. I grew up in the South as a child. He's one of the people that taught me that what I'm seeing around me ain't good.
That's right.
That's bad. It's evil. And it was Mark Twain who taught me that. And then To Kill a Mockingbird later on, and of course many others, and even novels and stories that had positions I didn't agree with taught me a lot. When I was a kid, Mein Kampf was in the library in Gladewater, Texas, and I read it there, and I didn't think, I want to be a Nazi. My first thought was how awful this is, because I'd already developed, certain skills of reading things and sort of thinking for myself, because my mother always pushed that, and I started reading very, very early. I mean, I could read by the time I was 4. I was not only just reading comics, I was reading children's books and other books and beginning to develop in that direction. And that's what you want. Is the idea is to be confronted with more ideas, not be limited to the ideas you've already embraced.
You know, there's a I mean, pulp. Okay, as a there's grit and philosophy in pulp. You know, there's a deeper truth kind of exploration that the horror and even, I mean, let's talk about westerns even as a form of having conversations about cultural anxiety.
Yeah, and it's our mythology.
Mm-hmm.
You know, some of that mythology is good, some of it's not so good. You know, and I think that that mythology is always changing and always expanding. Excuse me, I got a little
You're good.
sinus problem. But the Western that used to present a certain attitude, many of them great Westerns, but now that's changed because the Western, even though it's about older times, is always reflecting your own time. No matter when you write, you're always writing about your time. You may be writing about the 1700s, but you're writing about your time, you know?
Yeah, it's, I read a blog every so often. It's on the homepage of my phone. It's called The Medievalist. Okay. And I think it's fascinating. I'm a hobbyist when it comes to the medieval period.
Yeah, me too. I'm interested in ancient history and medieval history and
absolutely.
all that.
And the thing I like about this blog, it aggregates a lot of scholarship, and the scholarship that it aggregates is always honest about saying we're reflecting. You know, we're not pretending. Yeah,
absolutely. It's you know, you have a lot of people now that believe in what they call the purity test. You know, if you look back at old material and if it doesn't fit what people believe now, therefore it's dismissed. Well, even when I was growing up, there were certain aspects of that, but most people thought, okay, that was then, this is now. But people have become, and I'm going to say it, so consciously stupid by choice, what I call the happily stupid. It doesn't mean they're stupid by nature, but they're stupid by choice because it's so much easier not to think. And that's what we're getting is a group of people not to think. They want people to think for them and tell them what they want to believe and tell them what the world's about and tell them what's true and what isn't. And I don't think that's healthy.
Yeah, I'm not taking a shot at your home state of Texas here, but
one of the
bills.
I love Texas. Texas is in my bones, but I would take a lot of shots at it.
Okay, that's fair. So HB 900, a year and a half ago, was a bill that the state of Texas put forward. It's been overturned in the courts. You know, big publishers, a lot of folks lined up against it. It wanted to label books. It wanted to label books like with rated R, rated PG, rated G. I mean, I don't know how many rated G books, you know, I want to read as an adult, you know. And I don't want to be limited to rated G books as an adult.
No, I read a lot of young adult novels and children's books too. I read everything that interests me, you know.
Well, you seem like a voracious type of reader. But what I'm saying is the idea that the state wants to label the state, okay, as a state actor, as a unit of government wants to label these books, is to me one of the most pernicious forms of censorship that could potentially be.
I agree with you 100%. You know, there's really shouldn't be any more said. It used to be just the dinglings and the goobers that didn't know that these things were common sense.
You know,
but now they want to reflect everything within their own light, be it political, religious, or whatever it is. And you know, I think you got to. I think that if you're really someone who thinks you're capable, that you're an adult, you can make your own decisions about these things without having somebody, usually some moron, trying to tell me what it is I need to think about some work that's been written. I can make up my own mind if I think the work stinks or that if it's fantastic.
You know, it's interesting the use of dingling and goober, and I do appreciate that. You know, when I think about those individuals who are making those rules, we often hear at every library talk about they're elected officials if you like them, they're politicians if you don't. You know. And
that's not entirely wrong,
right? Yeah, but either way, not my bedroom, not my bookshelf. Get the hell out of here, you know?
Yeah, well, you know, you have people that are on these councils that aren't on there because they love books. They're on there because they don't love them. They're on there because they want to find what's wrong with them. That's all they do. And oh my God, I'm offended by this. I remember they had a series of rules and things that they wanted moved from libraries, and it turned out that the Bible contained all of those.
Absolutely.
Well, Shakespeare, if you want to get the Iliad, the Odyssey, all of those fantastic books that I read and adored. There we go. I'm smart enough to know that in the Iliad, I don't want to go out and kill Trojans. I don't have to have somebody explain that to me. But I think it's just a magnificent work, and it's such a, I guess, a conglomeration of everything that humanity considers. From war to sex to individual to bragging to being disappointed to jealousy. Every human emotion is in those things in the Bible and all that, because I'm an atheist. I don't believe in those religions. But on the other hand, I've read the Bible. That's why I'm an atheist. But I read the Bible, and I know a lot about the stories in it, and those stories are fantastic. The Old Testament, the New Testament, especially the Old Testament, as far as stories go. As far as like how you want mankind to be, that's not the one for me. But nonetheless, you read everything. And I probably already offended some people, and that's okay. I don't mind.
Joe, it's I'm reminded of my high school English teacher, junior year of high school. He had a PhD in comparative literature, and he said, and I went to an all-boys Catholic high school, okay? And he said to us, gentlemen, remember why they were lashed to the mast. That it was about sex, gentlemen. It was about sex.
Yeah.
All right, we're coming around to a couple good minutes together, and I appreciate you very much. This is, a good conversation about our political stuff, and every library is a political action committee. But I got a library in the title too, so I need to ask you to reflect for me a little bit. You mentioned way at the beginning about bookmobiles. I love hearing the bookmobile story. I mean, you're a writer who reads, or are you a reader who writes? That's really my question.
It's so blended, I don't even think of it that way. Reading is the most important thing in my life. I mean, I do other things. I'm a martial artist. I do all those things are very important, but reading is everything, because reading reflects itself with writing. And it's because I love reading so much that I wanted to be a writer. When I was 4, I was introduced to comic books, and that's why I decided I wanted to write and draw. And I was an absolutely brilliant artist when I was 4. When I was 6, I was the same artist. By the time I was 12, I realized my mother had lied. I was not brilliant. But I like stories, and I got better at stories. And so I started then going to have the bookmobile in Mount Enterprise, Texas. It would come, you go in, you pick your book. There was a kid that didn't like to read. He gave me his card. And so I doubled up. He would go with me, actually, and he would use his card, and I would pick what I wanted.
You get to double up? You double dip at the bookmobile?
I did. I double dipped at the bookmobile, and then I would return all the books. He would go with me again, and we would pick new books, and I did that numerous times. And there was no library in Mount Enterprise, but I used to have a library card for Gladewater, Texas, which is where I was born. And we would go there to visit relatives, and I would get books there. And then my parents would take them back for me. And then eventually they developed one in Mount Enterprise that my mother supported. My father couldn't read or write, by the way. Okay. And he always pushed me to do these things and to be a reader and to be a writer. And he and I disagreed on a lot of things, but they were my heroes, my parents, because they believed education was important, and not just education you wanted, education that you didn't know you wanted until it was introduced to you. I mean, sometimes then at some point you go, okay, that doesn't interest me. I'm not going to be a guy that does algebra. It's not going to happen.
Sure enough.
But I learned about geography. I hadn't thought about that. I learned about history. I learned about literature. I learned about all these different and civics, which needs to be reintroduced to school, because people really no longer have any idea how government works. They think you have a king, and the king tells you what to do. And that's the way they see presidents now, is like somebody that rules.
Yeah, the unitary executive stuff. Yeah,
exactly. And it shouldn't be that way, no matter which side of the spectrum you're on,
So I'm glad to hear that there's a library kind of story in your life, though. It really warms my heart.
Oh, yeah, it was very important to me. I couldn't afford books. That's what it was. I would go in. My mother would drop me off after school, or I'd go there on Saturday, and read until noon, where I go get a hamburger and go to the movies and watch movies, which were my other love, to take my books home and read.
But Joe, I've talked to a lot of authors over the years, and a lot of folks just out there in the world about their library stories. And I've heard from people who say, "Oh, I have 5 library cards from 5 different libraries." But you're the first guy who's gone in there with a multiplier effect. Your buddy with the extra library card. That's really great. I love that. Joe, if I can ask you one more question here.
Absolutely.
As a writer, and then we're gonna have to wrap it up today. As a writer, what still is surprising to you when you sit down that morning? You said to me earlier, it's not about a particular genre. You're not throwing a dart at the wall either. What surprises you as a writer still?
That is there. It's a subconscious thing. When I put my feet on the floor, 99% of the time it's there. Sometimes I'll have a day when it's not so good, but I work 7 days a week. I work 3 hours a day at most.
Mm-hmm.
I write 3 to 5 pages a day. And if I get 10 or 15 some days, I love it. But it's still 3 hours. And once in a while, I'd go back and work in the afternoon or at night, but that's rare. But I found that that's what works for me, and it keeps letting me fill up the well at night with my subconscious. And so I'm always doing. And when I get up, I write like everybody I know is dead. I am not writing for anybody other than me. And
wait, say that again to me.
I write like everybody I know is dead.
Wow. Okay, because fear of judgment. Holy cow.
Yeah, you don't want to think, oh, my wife, my agent, my kids, my friends, the editor are looking over my shoulder going, I don't know. So, and I censor myself if I think I need it, and I let it go if I think I don't. But it's up to me. And I don't want someone else doing that. I mean, it's different when a proofreader goes, you did this or what. That's later. But when I'm writing, when I get finished, I hope somebody likes it, very much so. But when I'm writing it, I can't be worried about other people and what they think, because I got in this to make a living, but I didn't get in it just to make a living, or I'd be a lot richer, because I chose things sometimes that were crazy and wild, but for me were wonderful and satisfying, and were influenced by the writers I grew up reading, and I think I developed my own path through their inspirations.
Joe R. Lansdale, thank you for sharing this with me today. This has been a great chat. I've enjoyed bringing this banned books conversation forward about censorship, but also just hearing about your craft, because fundamentally what we're interested in doing here at Every Library is making sure that libraries are there like they were for you when you were a little kid, but libraries are there again and again and again for all these different kinds of uses. And that connection between the writer and the reader that you're describing here, thank you for sharing your insights.
You're welcome.
All right, so what we do here at Every Library is we always wave at the end, and then I put up the title card, and then I hit end recording, and I'll see you in the green room, okay?
Okay.